Hey, I am Shaman. This is Yolanda, my lovely wife and life partner in business and everything.
And life and everything. Yeah.
We are from Harper Therapy.
Yeah.
And this month we're going to talk a little bit about burnout.
Yeah.
Which is a kind of a big thing,
Yeah.
especially like the last few years. Burnout has become a really big thing.
Yeah. We've been talking about it a lot more.
Right. We see it a lot more in session.
Yes, we're seeing it at our therapy practice. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, it's...
The world is seeing.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say we've run our fair share of...
Anyone who's human, has...
Yeah, I think,
has, there is a likelihood that you can become burned out,
right.
For sure, yeah.
So, then let's define it.
Yeah.
When we're talking about burnout, what are we
talking about?
Right, what are we talking about?
I think, so anytime I say or hear the word burnout, like I feel it in my body. It's just So I think, in contrast, if you think back to a time that you really loved work and you loved the thing that you did and
you're
your job.
Passionate about it.
You're passionate about it. You were energized by it.
Right.
You're happy.
Really jazzed.
Right. Burnout is the opposite of that.
Right. I mean, it's like a...
Energized and like happy is up here, and burnout is like here.
Right. It's like I guess the word's apathy for it. It's like you're just kind of over it.
There's some apathy. There's some just tired and exhausted all the time.
Right.
It is lower energy. It's being frustrated by your work. Actually, a lot of people liken it to like the depression of the workplace.
I was just about to say that. It's the symptoms are kind of similar to depression.
They are. So I think a lot of us know kind of what burnout can be, right? You find yourself cranky. You find yourself on edge.
Right.
You might even have some somatic symptoms and like stomach aches and headaches and that kind of thing. Interestingly enough, in 2019, the World Health Organization made burnout an official diagnosis.
Oh, did they really?
Syndrome. Yep.
I did not know that.
Yeah. And post-COVID, there are a lot of people who are like, is this an epidemic? Is burnout an epidemic? They're really taking into consideration, like, because it's impacting so many so broadly.
Well, I think that speaks to our culture.
Yes.
And our society.
Yeah.
And how we structure our work.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not to say you can't be burned out from things that aren't work.
So I think, especially since COVID, we've been burned out with work, and then we've been burned out just with life.
Right.
Like with what has happened
in
life.
I can remember coaching kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I coached all of our kids in soccer and football and all kinds of things when they were growing up.
Yeah.
And I can remember very succinct times where I'm just like, I'm just so done with this. I'm so burned out over this. And, that's been years and years ago, but sometimes that still makes me shake a little bit, when I think about that.
So when things become heavy, burdensome, when you find things boring, monotonous, unchallenging, that overwhelm, that can be burnout. Too many responsibilities with not enough help.
Right.
Like the stress of getting the work done outpaces the resources that you have to get the work done.
Or even like what you're producing, right? Like, is it of anything of value? Do you find any worth in it?
Right. Does it have meaning for you?
Right. Does it have meaning? Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah. Having meaningful work is something that is really important, and it can prevent burnout.
Right.
Sometimes the burnout comes from our own need to control things and our difficulty in delegating.
Right, because we're like, I just have to have all the pieces look the right way. And that also speaks to our society, right?
Well, it speaks to those of us who are type A perfectionists.
Right.
Not that I know anything about that, but that can just definitely contribute to burnout.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important to highlight burnout isn't like an on and off switch. We're not like not burned out or burned out, right? It can happen along a continuum. So there might be periods of time where you think, oh, okay, I'm doing okay.
It's manageable.
And then all of a sudden the dial is turned up. Right. So here's the thing. What I have learned, and what I, part of the conversation for us to have this month is that recovering from burnout and preventing future burnout is more complicated than simply taking time off.
Right.
So that is kind of a distinguishing factor, what many consider a distinguishing factor between depression and burnout. Like with burnout, if you take time off, then
you fix it. Everything's great.
Everything feels better.
Right.
Yeah, I would argue that it's more than simply taking time off to alleviate it. It is more complicated than the tips that you find online for creating boundaries with work and
self-care.
The self-care, which
they have value,
right?
But
it's more nuanced.
Right.
It's been my experience in working with clients, and
just our own life experience.
Yes, that it's more nuanced than that. So this month we're going to talk about some of the deeper things.
About burnout.
We always go deeper here. I don't know. It's kind of what we do. We have, the surface level conversation about burnout, and now we're talking about all the things that kind of are deeper that contribute to it. So join us and get some tips for, not tips and tricks, but get a better understanding about how you can take care of yourself. And
recognizing it. Kind of how you position yourself to deal with it better, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's more than just doing the couple of self-care things.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say I took a sabbatical a couple of years ago.
I was wondering if you were gonna mention this.
Yeah. So I took a sabbatical a couple of years ago, and that was time away from work, but that was also time nourishing my soul. And so the sabbatical that I took was an event, like this period of time on the calendar. But it's also an ongoing practice for me. So I'm going to be sharing some of those things that nourish our hearts, nourish our souls, nourish, the depths of who we are, that help prevent burnout.
And largely that sabbatical was driven by you hitting a brick wall.
I hit a wall.
And burnout.
Yeah, so it wasn't pretty.
We'll see you guys next week.
See ya.